Okay. Amen. Amen. So complete freedom. Complete freedom. Um uh, Earlier this week I was uh I guess meditating on the word, and God spoke to me. He spoke to me, and I was thinking about the Israelites. We can learn a lot from the Israelites, them wandering in the wilderness all of this time. And I was thinking about that. And the Lord pointed out something to me. He said, you know, um, they were free. Like he delivered them. He gave them freedom, but he said there's a difference between being free physically and being free mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so a lot of times we get frustrated with God because we want to experience, we say we want to experience freedom, but we want to experience the physical freedom, not understanding that we have to be completely free. Like we have to experience the spiritual and the mental and the emotional freedom, because I can move out of a situation. God can free me out of a situation, but I may still have the same mentality and have the same mindset, and have the same emotions that are tied to that situation. And so what God was showing me is that yes, they were free physically, but they still had too many ties to Egypt. And because of that, they had to go through this wilderness experience. And so sometimes in our lives, we go through the same thing. God frees us from a specific situation, but we feel like we're in this wilderness. We feel like we're going back and forth, going round and round. And that is because God is trying to free us emotionally and mentally and spiritually. He's trying to disconnect us from completely from that situation. Okay. So if we look at physical freedom can be freedom from physical ailments, oppressive situations, just like with the Israelites, and or limitations. Okay. But if we think about mental and spiritual and emotional freedom, it's freedom from like those negative thoughts, those fears, and anxieties, as well as from the influence of sin and the world. Okay. And so we don't just want to be physically removed from a situation and free from that, but we want to experience the total freedom. Okay. We look at Romans 7:22 through 23. The apostle says this. He says, "For I delight in the law of God after the inward man, but I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members." And so in John Gill, he describes it like this. He says, "But I see another law in my members." He says, it says that is, he saw and perceived it by experience. And he felt the force and power of inbred corruption working in him, and as a law demanding obedience to it. Okay, so this is this war, this internal war that's going on. And so in order for me to be completely free, I'm not just disconnecting from the situation physically, being removed from it, but I have to be removed from it mentally and emotionally and spiritually. Okay. So let's look at the Israelites. Let's look at the Israelites. So if we look at Exodus 3:7 through 9, this is where God talks about how he's heard their cry, and he's seen their oppression. Okay. It says, and the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and to bring them into a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. So look, this is what he's saying. He doesn't just tell them that I'm going to deliver you, but then he's telling them where he's going to take them. I'm going to deliver you to a place with flowing with milk and honey. He says, unto the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. He says, now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. So I want you to pay attention to this. But look at this. It says, he tells them who's in the land. Like he specifically tells them these people are taking this, these people are occupying this land, but I'm giving it to you. Like this is where I'm taking you. Okay, I want you to remember that because it's going to be very important. So here, God is expressing, I've heard your cry. So they're crying out to God because they are slaves. They are being beaten, they are being killed, they are being subject to all kinds of oppression. And so as a result, they're asking God to come and to deliver them. They're asking him, right? They want to be free. They want to be delivered. Okay. So now I want you to take a look. We're going to look at Exodus 16. Okay. Exodus 16. So if you're looking at first verse, at the very end, it says, on the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. This is the time frame. Okay. So if you look in that second verse, it says, and the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full, for ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Here's the thing, look at this. Now, they don't remember in this moment, they don't remember, oh, they were getting beaten, they were getting killed, they were being, they were going through all this oppression. Now they're like, well, we could have stayed in Egypt. We had food. Right? We had food. And then it says in the fourth verse, it says, then said the Lord unto Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day. Now this is the commandment for here. He says that I may prove them. So that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or no. So this is what God was saying right there. Now that I have freed you physically, now I need to work on you spiritually. Now I need to work on your mental state. Now I need to work on your emotions, because whether you know it or not, your emotions, your mental state, and your spiritual growth is still attached to Egypt. The first sign of an issue, they were like, we could have stayed in Egypt. Well, didn't you cry out and ask God to deliver you out of Egypt? We forget about the issues and the problems and the oppression that we were experiencing in this past situation, because now I don't like where I am. But where you are, you're free physically. God is trying to free you spiritually. He's trying to get you to trust in him. He's trying to get you to a place where you're able to walk into that new purpose or that new land that he has for you. He's trying to help you. He's trying to heal you mentally, heal you emotionally, and you want to go back to where you were. So if we look at that, go down to the 28th verse. Because what God does, he says, I'm gonna rain, he tells me I'm gonna rain bread. And so he tells them, he says, look, on the seventh day, that's the Sabbath, I want you to rest. So on the sixth day, these are simple instructions, right? This is not hard. On the sixth day, I want you to gather for 2 days. That way on the Sabbath, you can rest. Okay. And so they didn't, they still had men going out on the seventh day. and then being upset because they didn't have no bread, right? But God specifically told you to do double on the sixth day so that you don't have to do on the seventh day. And so if you look at the 28th verse, it says, and the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? I got to work on you. Because yet, yes, I brought you out of Egypt, but you still rebellious like you in Egypt. I brought you out of Egypt, but you still thinking like you in Egypt. I brought you out of Egypt, but you still serving Egypt. And so, if we look at, I like what John Gill says. He says here where it says, "How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws?" He says, "This is not said merely with respect to their breach of the commandment of the Sabbath, as if they had long refused to observe and keep that." He says, "Whereas that was but one command." He says, but upon their breach of that, he takes occasion to upbraid them with their former transgressions of other laws of his, in which they had continued in, or at least were frequently committing, and which was a proof of their their perverseness and rebellion against him, though he was so kind and bountiful to them. And so he's like, look, you're out of Egypt, and before I take you to this promised land, I need to work on you. Okay. I want us to take a look at Exodus 32. Exodus 32. We're gonna look at 7 through 9. And so here, this is when and we've talked about this before, but this is when Moses was in the mountain. He's having this moment with God, getting these commandments, and here they are, restless. I don't think he coming back. So we might as well get this golden calf and start worshiping it. I might as well look. Moses not here to keep me accountable to what God says. So let me go back to the gods of to Egypt where they was worshiping idols. And I might as well. I need to go back to that mindset. That mindset doesn't lead me forward in God. That mindset doesn't give me where God is trying to take me. That mindset keeps me where I was trying to leave, where I was bound. Okay, so this is what happens in the seventh verses. And the Lord said unto Moses, go get thee down. For that, look at what he tells for thy people. Look, he said, your people, okay, your people, which you brought out of the land of Egypt. This is how bad God was. Have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way. It didn't take much. Like, oh, he's not here. Let's go back. Out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf and have worshipped it and have sacrificed thereunto and said, these be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. They created, they did what they knew to do from Egypt and said that those were the gods that brought them out of Egypt. Okay. And it says, and the Lord said unto Moses, I have seen these people, this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Pretty much God was saying, they are hard-headed. Okay. They are hard-headed. Look, sometimes I'm still in the wilderness because I'm hard-headed. God is trying to pull some things out of me, and I'm upset, and I'm mad about where I am, and I need to be saying, God, why am I still here? What are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to pull out of me? What are you trying to heal me from? What are you trying to deliver me from? What are you trying to free me from? Because even though I am no longer here, I'm still wandering around in the wilderness, not knowing where I'm going or what I'm doing. What is going on? What are you trying to show me? God is saying, I'm trying to work on your spiritual growth, your spiritual development, because there are times when things come at you, or you're faced with situations that you go back to where I physically freed you from. Right? Last thing. I want to look at the last thing. Numbers 13. And I want us to remember, God told him he was taking them to the land with milk and honey, and he told them who was there. Okay. So if we look at Numbers 13, this is where God tells Moses to go send out the spies. He says, go send out these spies so that they can scout the land, search the land, and everything. The land that God has already told them that's where he was taking them. The land that God has already told them that is inhabited by these people. Okay. God has a purpose for everything that he does. Because he could have just said, just go in there. He said, no, send spies. Oh, see what they say. Send spies. And so it says, Caleb, he comes back and he's like, yeah, we can take it. We can do it. Let's go. But if you look at 31st verse, it says, but the men that went up with him said, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land. They brought up an evil report of the land that God told them that he was taking them to when he was releasing them, right? It says an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Um, So then, after the report, let's go to Numbers 14, 1 through 4. It says, and all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses. And they go with their murmur against Moses and against Aaron. And it's crazy because Moses is already told, you're murmuring against us, but you think it's against us, but you're really doing this against God. And it says, and the whole congregation said unto them, would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in this wilderness? And wherefore hath the Lord brought us into this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, let us make a captain and let us return to Egypt. How many times have I said, I should just go back to what I was doing before? I should just go back to where I was. At least I was being fed there. At least I don't have to face these over here. But here's the situation. Here's the thing. If God has already spoken to you and into your life and told you, this is where I'm taking you, this is what you're going to face when you get there, if he's already told me that that's what's going to happen, apparently he's already equipped me, or he's already provided a way for me to get through whatever I have to get through to get where he wants me to be. But because we sometimes are still connected and mentally and emotionally to where we left, we have a hard time being able to see where God is trying to take us. If you look in that 13th chapter, they said it. They're like, oh yeah, it's the land of milk and honey. It's what God, it's everything God said it was going to be. Then if it's everything that God said it is going to be, why am I walking in fear? Why am I being rebellious? Why am I not listening to what God is telling me to do? This, if you look it up, in modern times, they say that it should have taken them about 10 to 11 days to get where they were going. And they spent 40 years. 40 years. 40 years of not believing, 40 years of not doing what God told them to do, of not being obedient. 40 years. And they spent that because they were just happy to be free. They didn't realize that God needed to help them to be free mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Because if I don't do those things, I'll always look back and I'll try to go back to where he freed me physically. And so I want to encourage you guys on this morning. Um, if you look at Galatians 5:1, he says here, stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. A lot of times we're looking for freedom, and we don't understand that freedom, that's a mind, body, and soul thing. That is not just I'm being placed out of whatever situation I'm in, but it's also allowing God to heal me, heal my mind, heal my spirit, heal all the things and the emotions that were attached to that situation. Because I can get out of the situation, but I can still be the same person I was in that situation. And I cannot go into the purpose and the promises that I know God is trying to take me to if I'm still in that state. God has to work on me. And so if I'm wandering around in this wilderness, I feel like I'm going around in circles. I feel like I'm going through the same motions. I have to stop and I have to say, okay, God, what is it you're trying to free me from? What am I still attached to that I don't need to be attached to emotionally? What am I still attached to that I don't need to be attached to mentally? What is the struggle in my spiritual life that is a remnant of being in Egypt? Those are the questions that I need to ask myself. Those are the questions that will help me to get on track. So I'm not wandering in 40 years in the wilderness trying to figure it out or missing the promise altogether. I don't want to miss the promise. I don't want to wander around in the wilderness. I want to do what is necessary so that I can be and I can have complete freedom. Amen.